Hey, would you look at that? I bought some Ryzen 7000 stuff because I felt like starting a house fire and bankrupting myself, but that's not really the point of today's video. The reason I got it is because this actually has an iGPU in it, which AMD's quite coy about. They didn't really mention it much, and I think it's because it's not very well endowed. It's only got 2 GPU cores. That's one less than a 200 GE, which doesn't mean a whole lot, but still. So in today's video, we're gonna compare an old 3 to a new 2, and then we're gonna try and game with it at a very reasonable resolution. I love that they feel it's necessary to say that there's no cooler in the box. Yeah, I'd kinda hope there isn't a cooler in here, AMD. Whoa. Wow, that is a very fancy looking cheapest motherboard I could find for the platform. No wonder it cost like $3 million. But moving on, we finally get an LGA socket on an AMD platform, which means no more savaging the CPU out of the socket every time you take the cooler off. See, every time. Which as an incompetent person, I find very exciting. You kinda, there we go. Ooh. Although it doesn't, is this the same size as AM4? It does actually feel like it. It's about the same size. The heat spreader's a bit smaller, although this has a lot more heft to it. This is quite a weighty CPU actually. But look at the back, that gets me real hot and bothered. Okay, it's finally time for my first ever AM5 CPU socketing. Some yummy DDR5. In terms of cooler, for the supposed very cool running Ryzen 7000 series, I'm using this new Deepcool AK620 Dark Zero, which is just like a stealthed out version of the AK620. But before we fire up this 7600X to see how the iGPU stacks up, we do need a point of comparison for it. Some real loser APU to make the iGPU in there look good. Or really bad. We'll see how it goes. Now, considering that the 200 GE can easily be cooled by a gentle summer breeze, we don't need to worry too much about cooling, so I'm just gonna use this AMD Wraith cooler, which even this is kinda overkill for it, but I had it lying around, so let's use it. Power supply wise, I'm using the very reasonable C1000 that NZXT sent over, because everybody knows APUs are very power hungry, especially Athlons.
A few moments later.
Okay, that's a bit annoying. The Athlon 200 GE isn't compatible with this specific X570 board for some reason, so I'm gonna have to change out the motherboard quickly. Okay, so I just gotta jump start it like I'm stealing a car. Hey, it works! That was really irritating, but at least it works. Good, good, good. Oh, I actually forgot about the old AMD APU working super hard bug. We've got 65,000% GPU utilization, which just shows how serious this little Vega 3 is. Now, we're currently running a 1080p normal settings, so it's like the lowest for GTA 5, and wow, it's actually kind of running better than I remember it running. Like, getting about 30 frames per second at 1080p with a 200 GE is quite impressive, I'm not gonna lie. I think the least impressive thing about this whole situation is that the CPU utilization is almost 100%. That poor little dual-core Athlon is really struggling to keep up with its iGPU. But with us just using the iGPU, it's actually not that bad, it's quite impressive. CSGO is running similarly at 1080p low settings as GTA 5 was, but for CSGO it's much less acceptable. Having said that though, usually at this kind of frame rate, you get really terrible input lag. Whereas here, you know, it doesn't feel too bad. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about this Cyberpunk performance. Moving on. Now that we've gotten a bit of a sense of the power of the Athlon 200 GE, I think it's time to swap over to the CPU we're all here for and see how that iGPU handles gaming. Whoa, I knew these ran hot, but damn, that is crazy. Depending on what those numbers are, we are about, what, 90 million degrees over the temperature of the surface of the sun? It's not good. No way, that's actually quite a bit better than I was expecting. We're, what, about like 15 frames per second faster than the Athlon 200 GE? Now that I've said it, that doesn't sound that impressive. But still, you can play some GTA 5 at 1080p low settings, and it runs fine. Considering that the CPU's not having to do much, the temperatures aren't that bad either, you know? We're sitting at about 50-ish degrees Celsius, which is a whole lot lower than the iGPU's temperature. It's quite impressive how they thermally isolate the two from each other that well. Not only are we getting about between 70 and 90 frames per second, it feels really good. Like, this input lag is crazy good. It's way better than like a GT 710, for example, which again isn't the most impressive victory. Now you can see that it's got quite a high core frequency compared to the 200 GE. Also, we are using DDR5 in this system as opposed to DDR4 with the 200 GE. So this iGPU does have quite a lot more memory bandwidth available to it. This is getting me pretty excited for dedicated APUs of this generation. Okay, I guess that's a big improvement over the 200 GE. We have what looks kind of remotely like movement, but you know what they say, the human eye can't really see over 3 frames per second anyway, which means I think we have more than enough headroom for some pretty serious 4K gaming on this iGPU. Who knows, maybe even with Cyberpunk. Let's give it a try. But first, we need to unbox a monitor worthy of this kind of power. Ooh. Oh. Wow, that is a lot of keywords. Look at all of that. Yeah, thanks Corsair for sending over the awesome Xeneon 32 UHD 144 in the Lost Ark crate. Nice. Ooh, that's a big boy. And it's being driven by the perfect GPU, a Ryzen 7000 iGPU. Now, our first problem is that the HDMI port on this motherboard only supports 4K up to 60 Hz. Now, I don't know if that's due to the iGPU or the motherboard, I don't know where the limitation lies, but either way, we're gonna have to game in 60 Hz like some kind of animal, which honestly really isn't a problem, considering that we're probably not gonna get anywhere near to 60 frames per second at 4K with this iGPU. It's like the lamest complaint ever. Wow, 14 frames per second. A frame rate I see suspiciously often on the channel. At this point, it doesn't even feel that bad anymore, you know? I've kind of gotten used to the 14 frame per second life. It's kind of usable, I guess. Now, CSGO at 4K low settings gives us a pretty cinematic frame rate, actually. I wouldn't call it playable because at this resolution, it does introduce a lot more input lag than was present at 1080p. Now, it's not going very well in terms of Battlefield 5. As I die in slow motion there. But I don't think this is the worst I've seen Battlefield 5 run. What I find interesting is we have 32 gigs of DDR5 in this system. And as far as I know, technically 16 of it is allocated to the iGPU if it did want to use it. But it's still topping out at just about 500 megs of memory usage. Wait, that's actually running about the same, if not a little bit better, than Battlefield 5, which is interesting. Again, not even almost the worst Cyberpunk gaming experience I've seen. Now, I am very curious to try Fidelity FX on an iGPU, so let's set it to balanced and see if it helps. Not very much at all. Okay, let's take it to like ultra performance. Wow, look at that. Ultra performance has pretty much doubled the frame rate. Each frame does look a little bit like it's being drawn with an Etch-a-Sketch. There is a very interesting aesthetic to the image. It's very blurry, yes, but that's not really the thing that stands out to me. It looks pretty weird, actually. That's crazy. The final thing I want to do with Cyberpunk is it does have a Steam Deck quality preset, and I'm interested to see what that does with the little iGPU. Whoa, okay, the Steam Deck is clearly a complete monster. Because with the Steam Deck preset, we're just getting 2 frames per second. I don't know what's worse, the 2 frames per second or the extremely heavily handed motion blur usage. It always blows my mind how well Half-Life 2 runs on everything, because at 4K, it's a pretty good looking game. And one of the reasons why Half-Life 2 is the game from this era that I always use for these kind of tests is because it just scales so well with resolution. Like at this point, it's very predictable. Like Half-Life 2 is gonna run on these systems, which I find quite funny actually every time, because when this came out, like in 2004, Half-Life 2 was considered a very demanding game. But in modern terms, pretty much anything can run the game now, and that's quite cool. So, what did we learn in today's video? Well, apparently a brand new CPU with hundreds of dollars worth of platform around it is faster than a CPU from 2018 that cost $55 new. And on that very useful note, it brings me to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing and maybe watching another video. A suggestion will pop up in a second. And until the next video, bye-bye.